Welcome back to the Universal Things YouTube channel. What if one day, the unthinkable becomes reality, and World War III begins? Not as a prediction, not as fiction, but as a real global event unfolding in real time. How would Earth change in the hours, days, and years that follow? And more importantly, would humanity ever truly recover from it? It wouldn't begin with explosions alone. It would start with confusion, sudden alerts, disrupted networks, misinformation spreading faster than truth. Within minutes, people across the world would realize something is terribly wrong, but no one would fully understand how big it actually is. The first phase of modern war would be mostly invisible. Cyber attacks could shut down power grids, disable financial systems, and collapse communication networks. Satellites might be targeted, cutting off GPS and global connectivity, leaving entire nations digitally blind. As systems fail, physical attacks would begin. Major cities, military bases, and economic centers would become immediate targets. Airports, highways, ports, and energy facilities would be destroyed, creating instant chaos and cutting off movement and supply lines. If nuclear weapons enter the conflict, the scale of destruction changes completely. In seconds, entire cities could vanish. The heat from a single blast could ignite everything nearby, while shockwaves flatten buildings miles away, leaving behind a silent and devastated landscape. But the explosion itself is only the beginning. Radiation released into the environment would spread through air currents, soil, and water systems. Survivors in affected regions would face long-term health consequences that could last generations. Within just a few days, global supply chains would collapse. Food would stop arriving at stores, fuel would run out, and transportation would freeze. What starts as panic buying would quickly turn into a desperate struggle for basic survival. Hospitals would reach their limits almost instantly. With no steady electricity, limited medicine, and overwhelmed staff, even treatable conditions could become fatal. Healthcare systems would struggle to function in a world suddenly pushed beyond capacity. Governments would try to maintain control, possibly enforcing emergency laws or military presence. But in many regions, authority could weaken quickly. Without structure, some areas might fall into disorder, where survival instincts override social rules. Above all this, the sky itself would begin to change. Massive amounts of smoke and debris from explosions and fires would rise into the atmosphere, blocking sunlight. This phenomenon, often called nuclear winter, could affect the entire planet. As sunlight decreases, global temperatures would begin to drop. Crops would fail due to lack of warmth and light. Agriculture would struggle worldwide, creating food shortages even in countries far from the conflict zones. Ecosystems would start collapsing under the pressure. Animals would lose habitats, food chains would break, and oceans could face contamination. The effects wouldn't just be limited to humans. Every living system on Earth would feel the impact. Electricity, something modern life depends on, would become rare. Without it, communication, transportation, and daily life would change completely. Humanity would be forced into a simpler, survival-based way of living. Clean water would become one of the most critical resources. With infrastructure damaged and contamination spreading, access to safe drinking water would be limited, increasing the risk of disease and further weakening populations. In the middle of all this, people would begin forming small communities. Groups would share resources, protect each other, and adapt together. Cooperation would become essential, because survival alone would be far more difficult. But the big question remains: how long would it take for Earth to recover from such a global event? Would it take decades, centuries, or even longer for the planet to return to something close to normal? Nature, however, has always shown resilience. Over time, forests could regrow, wildlife might slowly return, and abandoned cities could become overgrown landscapes. Earth itself would begin healing, even if humans struggle to do the same. Yet some areas would remain dangerous for generations. Regions heavily affected by radiation might stay uninhabitable for hundreds or thousands of years, creating long-lasting scars on the planet's surface. Human population would likely decrease significantly. With fewer people, rebuilding civilization would become a slow and challenging process, requiring cooperation, knowledge, and time. Technology might survive in fragments. While knowledge could still exist, the ability to use advanced systems would be limited by resources, infrastructure, and stability. Progress would slow down dramatically. Future generations would grow up in a completely different world. A world without constant internet, instant communication, or modern convenience. Their reality would be shaped by survival, adaptation, and rebuilding. And yet, throughout history, humans have adapted to extreme challenges. From natural disasters to global conflicts, survival has always depended on resilience and the ability to rebuild from nothing. So here's something to think about. If you were living in that world, after everything changed, what would you do first? Where would you go? And who would you trust in a world without certainty? Because in the end, the future of Earth after World War III wouldn't depend only on destruction. It would depend on the decisions people make afterward. And whether humanity chooses to rebuild differently this time.